Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman or God, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananji Maharaj, to sage Narada and all the sages and saints, and to each of you divine soul watching today's satsang. Today I'm very excited to start a new scripture with all of you. Those who have been following the Patanjali Sutras, now we know it concluded yesterday, and we have been studying that for the last several months. But I'm very excited to start this new scripture with all of you, Narada Bhakti Sutras, to give you some background before we get into the detail. This is the book that we will be using. It's called Narada Bhakti Sutras, the Yoga of Divine Love. This is written by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananji Maharaj, and I will be adding my commentary on this wonderful scripture. And so let's get started with it. And as we start, we will first do the introduction, then I will give you the various chapters and what the sutras are, and then we will get into the deeper insights of each of those sutras. Bhakti, as you all know, is called devotion, and without devotion we cannot succeed on this path of self-realization or walking on the Godward journey. So among the various branches of yoga, there are four main branches which are called action, which is karma yoga, and then bhakti, which is devotion, and then dhyana, which is meditation, and then finally jnana, or scriptures or wisdom. So all these four become like the strings of an instrument. And as you can see, Narada, many of you have seen sage Narada in different movies and so on. He's always having a veena in his hand, and a veena like goddess Saraswati, and he's also singing the glories of God everywhere. So sage Narada is also a sign of satsanga. Satsanga means good association. Wherever he goes, he brings blossoms of devotion with him. So devotion in the Sanatan Dharma philosophy is extremely profound. We say, there's a saying that says, "Jo mukti hai, bhakti ki dasi hai." What that means is that liberation is a maid servant of devotion. But to understand that, what it means that we have to feel connected to God with our heart. And our bhakti resides in our heart, whereas wisdom is more in our brain and mind. But even there, as you know, when we were doing the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there is this niyama called Ishwar Pranidhana, which means have faith in God and dedicate all your actions and self-effort to God. And so bhakti is even a part there. But bhakti by itself is standalone. It itself is a movement. And whereas in wisdom, there is a lot of requirements of reading the Vedas, the Upanishads, and so on. In bhakti, all you need is a pure heart, and you can be a total illiterate. But if you have that devotion, everybody is qualified for bhakti. So there is no certain requirement to have logic. This is based on our devotion and movement within our heart. That is the essence. And as we start these sutras, devotion, as we just talked about, is extremely powerful movement. And as we purify ourselves, purification of course is an essential requirement on this holy path. And as we advance, bhakti starts joining in automatically. So these are all different ways, the jnana, karma, bhakti, dhyana that we talked about, and they kind of integrate at one point. But here in this whole scriptural book, we will be focusing more on the devotion side, whereas Patanjali Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga we've recently completed, was all about meditation. So overall, if you are walking on this path, you will be well balanced and holistic. So from a broad viewpoint, there are two types of bhakti. One is called para bhakti, the other is called apara bhakti or lower bhakti. Para means higher and apara means lower. So you start with devotion and then it turns into supreme devotion, divine consciousness. So that is the journey that we have to take even in our devotional process. From apara bhakti, we have to eventually rise to the level of para bhakti. So when you hear of people like Shabri or Meera or people with intense faith where they are just totally absorbed in God consciousness, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for example, all those divinities and saints are absorbed in para bhakti. They have reached that super devotion stage. So that is the end goal. Para bhakti is our goal, although apara bhakti is the initial disciplinary stage where we are praying to God. We do pran pratishtha, for example. We have a deity, we offer him food, and we offer devotion, and we sing bhajans, kirtan, satsang. All those things are done, but eventually the goal is to raise it to the level of para bhakti. So you can consider apara bhakti as the part of the ripening of the fruit. So from a seed to the conversion of the full fruit is apara, and once the fruit is totally ripe and ready to be eaten, it becomes para bhakti. So that is the distinction. And in apara bhakti, so for those of us who are just getting started on the devotional side, that also appears in two stages. There is the initial stage that is known as the gauna bhakti or devotion, secondary devotion, and the advanced stage that is called mukhya bhakti, which is primary devotion. So secondary and primary. The latter is also known as ragatmika, raga. So that is the mukhya bhakti. Raga means attachment. So instead of getting attached to the world, we get attached to the God, and eventually it becomes ekanta, one-pointed, ekagra. So we are just totally absorbed in that process. Further insight into apara and para bhakti is gained through a study of the three gunas. Gunas are sattva, rajas and tamas. So in secondary devotion, which we just talked about, rajas and tamas are the predominating influence. Rajas is activity, tamas is inertia, and therefore these are the predominating. In primary devotion though, sattva increases. So when we go into the mukhya bhakti, primary, our sattva or purity starts to increase. We start thinking of God as our own self, as our family member. We are not separated from him. He doesn't reside somewhere far away, which means we start feeling his presence. And that is when our sattva or purity increases. In para bhakti, however, all three gunas are transcended. When we go at the extreme level, the gunas no longer hold their form. We transcend the gunas. Same thing happens in transcendental meditation or higher meditation. We are in samadhi. We are no longer in the initial stages of yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyana. We are now in samadhi. Same thing with the bhakti. When the bhakti has risen to that level that we feel one with God, that is called para bhakti, and the gunas of sattva, rajas and tamas are transcended. So let's talk about the format of this scripture, the chapters and the sutras. So the Narada Bhakti Sutra, there are a total of 84 different sutras in it. Sutras, as we have described before, sutra literally means a thread, and a thread is the initial unit on which all the, for example, a woven blanket is made up of threads, a woven shirt is made up of, everything we see has a basic, bare, essential element. That's what's called a thread in this context. So from there, the essence of the sutras are there, and we expand on that and we learn the whole scripture based on that essential fact. Just like H2O, people who know chemistry know that's water. 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 of oxygen, and so therefore they don't need to spell water every time, and when they are doing their higher level calculations, they just go through these mystic sutras. So in this context, these are the sutras we'll be discussing. So one, and deal with the various aspects of para-bhakti. So that's what we will deal with in different 84 sutras. So the first chapter consists of 24 sutras, and that will talk about the essence of para-bhakti. How are we going to attain intense devotion? The second chapter consists of 26 sutras from sutra number 25 to 50, and here supreme devotion is praised, para-bhakti, and the superiority of Bhakti Yoga over other spiritual disciplines is explained. Why? Because it's simpler, it comes from the heart, it flows from emotions. So it's not the logic side operating here. What's operating is your emotional side. In addition, it gives an outline to the disciplines and moral rules necessary for the practice of apara bhakti. So the initial stage and the advanced stage. So it kind of assumes we are new to the process and it guides us through. So, and the third chapter consists of 15 sutras which describe the characteristics of one who has attained the advanced level of apara bhakti. So even apara, which is the lower, also you start from the first step and then you reach the highest step. So that's the highest state you have achieved in the apara bhakti, and that is known as ragatmika bhakti, also raga, attachment, or ragatmika. Such a devotee becomes eventually a parabhakta, so which means you have now graduated to the para level automatically after reaching this stage. So again, this is a staged process, just like we learned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The fourth and concluding chapter consists of 19 sutras, finally from Sutra 66 to 84, which gives further insight into primary devotion and extol the glory of the final attainment of parabhakti. So it's very exciting. We'll study this wonderful scriptures together, and those of you, I know some of you have already ordered this wonderful scriptural book, but you can go to the website called yrf.org. Y as in young, R as in ready, and F as in France. yrf.org. This is the website of my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji, and he is the author of this book also. He has written over 50 books, and he has narrated and talked about every topic, spiritual topic on this planet Earth. He is a direct disciple of our divine Param Guru Swami Shivananda, that is our Guruji Swami Jyotirmayananda, and I am their humble servant, serving them in this divine mission and guiding each of you through whatever I have learned. So I'll be narrating this scripture while the commentary is by my worshipful Guru Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji. So I hope you've enjoyed this start, and I hope you'll join us and continue to follow this blessed journey. And please share this channel, this video, if you like, with others, so others can also benefit from this wonderful wisdom of our sages and saints. And my humble prostrations again to Sage Narada, who is a Chiranjeevi, which means he lives perpetually, just like Lord Hanuman and others. And we seek his blessings and the blessings of our worshipful Guru, whose grace is enabling us to enjoy the nectar of this satsanga together. This is Swami Nikhilananda, and we will be covering more of the details tomorrow. Om Tat Sat.